Chapter 7. The rest of the summer was quite dour, as you would expect after losing someone who meant so much to us. Lizzie's aunt and uncle didn't even have a funeral for her, so the three of us decided to hold our own ceremony at her grave right after they put her in the ground and left. I didn't have a suit, so just wore the nicest clothes I had. A dark blue sweater and a pair of black slacks. Dill and Tony both attended church with their families every now and then, and so they had what they deemed their church clothes. Tony in a black suit with black button-down shirt underneath looked the best of us, while Dill's suit was an ugly brown color with a light checker pattern visible when you get close enough to see it. It also looked a couple of years too old on him while we all stood there. Tony took charge with a eulogy that he seemed to come up with on the spot. It was so passionate that it would have brought Dill and myself to tears if we were not already there. Salty droplets fell from our faces and onto the tiniest headstone I had ever seen. It barely had room upon its face, sticking up from the grass to display her name and the years of her life. I honestly don't know why they even gotten her a grave at all. After what she told us and what we saw with our own eyes, I wouldn't have thought them to care enough to do so. Whatever reasons they had to do it, I'm glad that at least we had a place to mourn. As our own personal ceremony had come to an end, we all took turns saying our goodbyes to Lizzie. Though I've never been a religious or spiritual person, I still hope that she somehow heard our words, our apologies. The dark clouds gathered over us as we began to make our leave, and the rain began to fall, slowly at first. I think she heard us, Dill said as we made our leave from the cemetery. She's crying because she was touched by our words, he concluded. Tony and I looked at each other, knowing what he said was kind of stupid. However, it was so sweet and innocent, we couldn't bring ourselves to take away the slightest peace this may have brought him at the time. We continued out of the cemetery into the parking lot where Dill's mother was waiting for us. She sat smoking a cigarette, whose ash was far past the point of needing to be flicked off, and playing on her phone in their old, pale green colored minivan. As we approached the vehicle, but were still about half the parking lot away, the little bit of rain grew into a full downpour near instantly. The three of us began to race toward the minivan in a full sprint. Even in his suit, Tony was the fastest of us, while Dill quickly fell behind. As we made it to the parked vehicle, we startled Dill's mother so much that she almost dropped her cigarette, something she would never do under any circumstances. Jesus, boys, she called back to us from the front of the van. Where's the damn fire? No fire, Dill corrected her through heavy, deep breaths as he finally reached the van and climbed into the front passenger seat next to her. But it's pouring out there, he finished with another huge gasp of air. His mother turned her head and looked out the front windshield. Hell, she stated, surprised once again. It sure is. A Apparently, whatever she had been doing on her phone must have taken quite a bit of her attention. She not only didn't see the rain outside, but didn't hear the heavy drops banging against the glass in the middle of the van. "You boys alright?" she asked us all. "Physically, we're fine," Dill answers her. "But emotionally, there's a lot of turmoil." Dill always had an odd way of putting his thoughts into words. While what he said was correct, it was far more direct than anything anyone else would have come up with on the spot. This always made it easier for other people to understand my own emotions without me having to try to explain myself. So I normally just let him do the talking for us when he was up for it. While others always gave him weird looks, I always appreciated it. It was a nice way to say goodbye. I spoke up with the only thing I could think to say. "Okay," Dill's mom nodded with a half smile. "Then I'll go ahead and take you guys home." "Actually, Mom," Dill spoke up, "I was hoping they could stay with us tonight." He looked out the window and into the rain. He continued speaking without looking back at anyone in the van. "I don't think any of us should be alone tonight." His mother took a deep breath with a sad look on her face. "If it's okay with their parents, Tony and Aaron are always welcome to stay over." She turned back to us. "You two know that, don't you?" Tony and I nodded. "That poor girl," she went on. "She was always so quiet at our house, but was so friendly." Her eyes went between the three of us as she continued. "She was lucky to have friends like you boys." I know she meant to comfort us, but as she said this and put the van in reverse, I could not help but think her wrong. While we loved her and would do anything we thought would be good for her, it was our actions in the end that led her to the end of her life. So how lucky was she to have us, really? As we made our way out of the cemetery parking lot, Tony and myself texted our parents, and both received approval to stay over. After making a couple of quick stops to grab a change of clothing from each of our houses, we made our way to Dill's house. After a quick and mostly quiet dinner with Dill's mother and father, we headed down to our normal spot in the basement. We did very little talking for a while. We just played some games, tried our best to have a good time, pushing all the negativity deep within ourselves while we could. Nothing happened for the first hour or so until Tony couldn't hold back anymore and had his outburst. "Ugh, this is bullshit," he spouted out. Dill and I looked at one another, turned off the game, and waited for him to continue. "Don't you think?" he continued by posing the question to us. We looked back at him in confusion, as neither of us knew what he was talking about. Tony looked at us both in disappointment before explaining himself. "Those two sons of bitches killed our friend, and nothing has happened to them," he stated. While I thought I understood what he meant, I wasn't going to be the one to say it. Luckily, Dill was there to do so for me, as he normally did. "But," he stated, "Lizzie killed herself," he continued in confusion. "Do you really think she killed herself?" Tony asked us, but didn't wait for an answer. "Lizzie never would have done that." She was too strong of a person. He took a couple of quick, deep breaths while looking around, searching within his own mind. They obviously drugged her to get away with their crimes. This was not where I thought he was going with this accusation. I had thought he meant that they had driven her to suicide, but instead, he actually thought she was murdered. It was the first time the thought had even approached my mind, but now that it was there, it wasn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. Do you really think they killed her? I asked. I don't have a single doubt, he answered back. And it pisses me off that it looks like they're going to get away with it. I haven't heard anything about the cops investigating them at all. Do you even think the cops have even thought it was a possibility? Dill asked. I don't know, Tony answered back. They didn't do anything when they were abusing her, so I don't think they're really going to do anything now. Tony went quiet for a few seconds before nodding to himself, as if answering a question he had never asked aloud. We are going to have to do something ourselves, he stated with confidence. What? No, I answered back without even knowing what he meant. But the cops aren't going to do anything, so we're going to have to be the ones to make things right, Tony elaborated. It's only been a few days, not even a week since it happened, I tried to reason with him. But we don't know what the cops are doing. They aren't going to tell us who or what they're investigating, right? But didn't they already label Lizzie's death an apparent suicide? Dill interjected. We all sat quietly for a minute. That was until I broke the silence. Look, guys, we don't know what they're doing now. Let's give them a couple of weeks, and then talk to Parham, was my suggestion. While Tony was reluctant, Dill seemed easily swayed to listen to me. In the end, we all decided to give the police 10 more days before we would contact Detective Parham and try to get more information. So we waited. Thank you for listening. I release new chapters every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you prefer to read, I do release all 3 chapters every Sunday on my Wordpress. If you know anybody else who might be interested in this story, please feel free to share.